A chance encounter turns deadly.
My first thought when I looked at him was, wow, who made this happen to you?
There's not a lot of good ways to die, but in this case, Victor Woods would not be at the top of the list.
One of the hardest cases of his career.
We're talking about a guy here who's willing to kill anybody to cover up his crime.
Lieutenant Kenda is about to face off against one of Colorado's most notorious serial killers.
Somebody like that, he doesn't need to be around anymore.
I have the ultimate challenge. There's no link to this guy. Who the hell are you?
My name is Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I've solved almost 400 homicides. Every case is unique, but there's one thing that never changes. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories.
In the early morning hours of January 26, 1988, 911 receives an emergency call. A fire has broken out in a large apartment building. The Colorado Springs Fire Department races to the scene. The smoke is concentrated in one unit. When they get the blaze under control, the firefighters find several items of clothing smoldering on the floor. They appear to have been deliberately set on fire. Firefighters search the apartment. At first, it's all clear. Then they go into the bedroom. A man is laying unconscious on the floor.
It appeared that he had succumbed to smoke inhalation, but firefighters, upon closer inspection, observed stab wounds in his chest.
Firefighters check for a pulse but find nothing. They immediately call the police.
He was found dead in his apartment due to multiple stab wounds and incise wounds. Some of those wounds entered the abdomen and some of which entered the back. It was clear that some of these injuries occurred after he was dead. When you have cases like that, you know there's been a lot of extreme violence and a lot of anger delivered towards the person to the point at which they continue to injure that person after that person is clearly non-responsive and dead.
Papers and documents in the apartment indicate the victim is Victor Woods, a 31-year-old bike shop employee. The question is whether the fire and the homicide are related.
Concealment fires are very uncommon. It's not something that happens very frequently at all. Generally, if you have a concealment fire, it's because there is something that the suspect believes that is personal to them or is an identifying factor to them that they're trying to destroy, so that it stops that trail of leads for investigators to follow up to try and identify that suspect.
There's a lot of different things you can interpret out of that. One is that this was maybe a act where it was a spur-of-the-moment type thing. I killed the person, now the person goes into panic mode and figures I've got to hide the body, I've got to hide the death. Fire is an easy result.
If the fire was started to destroy the body, police know this is no ordinary crime scene. Veteran Detective Lieutenant Joe Kenda takes over the investigation.
I walk into this apartment, there is a white male in his 30s, Victor Woods. He's been multiply stabbed. One of the wounds is an eviscerating wound. It's a violent, savage attack. My first thought when I looked at him was, wow, who made this happen to you? What did you do? What did you say that made somebody do this?
Looking around the apartment, Lieutenant Kenda is stunned to see that the smoke alarm has been disabled.
When I saw that smoke alarm gone, you get a feeling come over you like, oh my, oh my. He just didn't want to kill this guy. He didn't care who he killed. There were 220 or so people residing in that building. A lot of children, a lot of babies, a lot of adults. A building like that would burn to the ground in a matter of a few minutes. It tells me that this person doesn't care how many people they kill. In my mind, I thought he was exceptionally dangerous. He was willing to take that step, and I felt compelled to really get on this. We have to find this guy.
Kenda examines the victim. Woods has been stabbed numerous times in the chest.
There is blood, and there is blood spatter. It's not uncommon in multiple stab. You get what's called cast-off bleeding. The first blow produces blood. The second blow disperses it. You've got a large bladed knife swung with great force into the victim, and every time that blade's withdrawn and raised back for another strike, it throws blood off the blade onto the ceiling, onto the walls, onto the surrounding area. I've even seen multiple stab wounds where you can count the number of wounds by the number of streaks on the ceiling. You count the streaks and you add one, and that's pretty close to your number of wounds. I'm thinking he's been stabbed between 8 and 10 times.
And judging from the blood spatter, police are looking for a large blade. They don't have to search very far. A kitchen knife with an 8-inch blade sits on a TV tray next to a chair.
It is soaked in blood, both the hilt and the blade. Most likely our murder weapon. Where did that come from? Look around in the kitchen, there's a knife block. The big blade is missing. That's our source. It tells me one important thing. Weapon of opportunity. Whatever went wrong in here wasn't planned. Somebody didn't come here with a weapon. They obtained one while they were here and left it behind.
A knife being used in a homicide has a lot of other potential other than just harming the victim, especially if it's a case where they've stabbed multiple times and now the knife is bloody, their hand is bloody, and it's slick. A hand can slip and actually end up receiving some injury as a result of running over the knife blade itself.
And a wound on the killer may be just as important as a wound on the victim.
I look in the sink and I see athletic socks. They're white. They are the same that are in the dressers in the victim's bedroom. They probably come from the apartment. They're blood-soaked. Those socks in the sink tell me our man's hurt. That blood belongs to the bad guy, not to our victim. He's cleaning up in that sink, or he's trying to.
The socks are sent to the lab for analysis. Police search the apartment for more evidence. They don't find any latent prints, but they also don't find any signs of forced entry. And that may be another clue.
The victim is familiar with the person that they allowed in. They're comfortable with them. They allowed them into their space so that it was easy access for the predator to enter in to commit that crime.
The crime scene provides Kenda with an initial profile of the suspect.
It's pretty apparent there's been overkill, and two things pop to mind. One is a crime of passion, and the other is rage. Either someone was very angry with this person, or somebody had a passionate relationship with that person. Something goes very wrong, and the relationship explodes in violence.
Police turn their attention from inside the apartment to outside. Maybe someone saw the killer leave the scene. Lieutenant Kenda talks with the caller who reported the fire, a 25-year-old pharmacist living in the unit above Victor Woods. She says that sometime around 2:15 a.m., she heard a loud scream.
She thinks it's a woman's scream, and she thinks the woman says, "Don't do that." She hears sounds of a struggle, like maybe a fight, but she doesn't hear anything else. She looks out the window to see if there's anything in the window, and she notices a car. She thought it was a Trans Am. She wasn't sure. Thought it was black, maybe had blue pinstripes on it. She'd never seen the car there before. She thought that was odd.
A second witness comes forward. She's a young athlete training at the nearby U.S. Olympic facility.
She got hurt during her training. She had a back injury, had difficulty with it, had trouble sleeping. She got up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get a can of pop out of the vending machine. She sees a car leave, really high rate of speed. Car takes off out of the lot. Very loud mufflers, loud engine, but she doesn't see who's in it. She's not sure what color it is, and it leaves at the moment she sees the smoke.
At this point in the investigation, detectives' only lead is a car leaving the scene at approximately the same time as the murder. Lieutenant Kenda circles back to the victim.
The next step is the most important one. Where was Victor? Where did he encounter this person who decided to kill him? So our focus at that point is, give me a timeline on Victor. When was he last seen alive? And we now know when he's dead. Where was he in between? Because that's the key to finding whoever's with him in this apartment.
Investigators contact Victor's employer and co-workers at the bike shop. Some of them tell detectives that Victor had been having some run-ins with another employee.
Oh, really? I like run-ins. What kind of run-in? Name calling and yelling and screaming back and forth. It seemed kind of odd to me that you would have that kind of heated argument among coworkers. So now we have someone else who's interesting. The car is interesting. This guy's promising. He doesn't like that guy, and he really doesn't like him. Well, we need a guy that really doesn't like him, because that's who killed him.
In January 1988, police find 31-year-old Victor Woods stabbed to death in his own apartment. The killer intended to destroy any clues by setting a fire, but it never caught.
He wants to prevent the discovery. He wants the police to believe this guy died in a fire. He didn't get it done.
Investigators run a background check on Victor and learn that he moved out to Colorado from Ohio.
Vic loved the outdoors. I mean, whether it was heading up to the mountains skiing in the winter or being on his bike, just even around town.
He would walk off the beaten path. A very unique individual. I guess I never knew anyone like him. He was, I think, made for Colorado.
After settling in, Victor Woods took a job working in a specialty bike shop.
It had been a couple years, and he had worked at a bicycle shop as a mechanic, and he had gotten recruited by someone down in Colorado Springs. They're opening a new shop, and that he thought there might be potential for advancement in the new company.
He's very good at building and working on and selling bicycles. He's the right guy in the right place at the right time. The guy hires him. So Victor's doing fine. He's getting along.
The news of Victor's murder stuns his family and friends.
I was basically devastated. I just could not believe it.
The only information I had was none. I did not know who he might have been hanging with or what was going on there. Vic, had no enemies. He just wasn't that kind of guy.
We did talk to the local ex-girlfriend. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. They just decided to break up, but normal relationship, normal guy. No issues with him as far as she knew. Victor's family provides a picture of a pleasant man who is in the bicycle business. There is no history in Victor's background that would suggest he has ever been involved in any of the high-risk behaviors that often wind up in people getting killed.
When investigators talk to Victor's co-workers, however, they discover that he may have made an enemy.
Well, Victor and this guy, they don't get along. What does that mean? Explain that more to me. They say that Victor and this particular guy have often argued, heated arguments over the method by which a bike was to be repaired, and it was always a bickering contest that got several times out of control. And you think, well, is that a reason to kill for? Well, some people don't need a reason, but that's not a reason. I thought there had to be something else to that. Why so heated? Why so escalating? Why so angry? If all it is about work, there's got to be something else there.
The question is, what is that something? Police bring the co-worker in for questioning.
He denies everything, of course. You know, he's angry, he feels trapped, he's frightened, he's all the right things. Nothing about him is unusual. Takes a while, but he finally says, well, it's more than about the repairs. Okay, because now I want you to tell me a story I'll believe. Don't tell me about fighting with this guy because you don't like his technique, because that's bull. Tell me what you feel. Why are you so pissed at this guy? And he finally tells me the truth, or something at least I believe. This guy was the top dog in his shop until Victor showed up. Now the guy's afraid he's gonna lose his job, because Victor is really good at what he does. And he's obviously much better than this guy. So he reacts out of self-defense to yell at Victor and try to minimize his skills and so on. And he's just trying to protect himself. Okay, I can believe that story. This makes sense to me. But still, we're gonna play the game. We use the polygraph tool. You take a polygraph about this, about killing Victor? Of course.
During the polygraph, the suspect denies being involved in the death of Victor Woods. But the test results tell a different story.
He takes the polygraph. He doesn't do well on the polygraph. That doesn't matter to me. The outcome of a polygraph doesn't make a difference to me unless there's an admission. My only purpose in using it is to get you to tell me, not the machine. You tell me. People get very frightened by the police. They get confronted by the police, particularly in a murder case, and everybody freaks. They're scared. They begin to think that maybe they did do it. All kinds of strange things happen. They become very frightened, and then they become angry. That's the standard kind of defense. If I just get angry and I yell and scream, they'll let me go. All kinds of human nature things kick into play. And you have to get accustomed to that. You see it all the time, so you are accustomed to it. They do say and do different things. So his reaction is pretty standard. He's terrified, but he's also angry. He's enraged, but he's scared to death. All that kind of works. That's routine when you say, come here. What do you know about this murder? Oh, well, I don't know anything. Oh, yeah, you do. And it just goes away from there to where they continue to be that upset. But we worked this guy. I ruined this afternoon, no question about that, but he's not my guy.
Kenda wants a confession, but instead gets an alibi for the night of the murder.
It turns out he belongs to a pool league. They stay there all night, shoot pool in the league. Nobody leaves. They go to breakfast at an all-night restaurant afterwards. They're not leave the restaurant until 4 o'clock in the morning. He's with them. He's not anything to do with this killing. So now we're back to square one.
Square one is the dead body of Victor Woods in a fast car leaving his apartment complex at 2 a.m. Investigators set their sights on Victor's last known whereabouts.
He likes to go to the Yukon Tavern. He likes to go there because it's kind of a hot place for people in their 30s, which this guy is, and it's close to where he lives. It's about 1.5 miles up the street from where he resides. They thought he went there that night, the night before he's discovered. He worked that day, and he got off in the afternoon, and he told his friends he was going to go to the Yukon Tavern for happy hour. So this is good. We know where he worked. We know he worked that day. We know, or we think we know, he went to the Yukon Tavern. At least that's what he told his friends. We find out Victor Woods is there routinely, and he was there that night. That he is a regular. They know him. Everybody in there knows him. They describe him as a nice guy. They also say he can get a little obnoxious when he gets drunk. He stays there all night, and he gets loaded. But he doesn't go home, and he won't leave. Keeps trying to drink. They finally cut him off. He gets mad about that. He wants more to drink. Finally, the place is starting to drift out because it's closing time.
A bartender and one of the waitresses both remember a guy sitting at the bar with Victor. A white male in his 30s.
The cocktail waitress says he's really good looking, looks like a movie star. She was struck by him. She was attracted to him. Handsome, handsome guy. Looks to be in excellent shape, has a tan.
The witnesses recall seeing the two men leaving the bar together at about 1:30 a.m.
The bartender says that after they left, she heard a car start. She described it as a muscle car, and she said that car had some throat. Oh, now we're back from the car at the apartments to maybe something promising.
It's frustrating to get information that you know is linking two different crimes and would be leading you towards a suspect. However, it seems that there's really nowhere to go with it. How do you identify a vehicle that people have said they heard, but you can't really go anywhere with it until you've got that extra factor that's going to point to a specific person, specific car, specific location?
We have information at the Yukon Tavern that Victor needs a ride. Victor is afraid to drive because he's drunk. Now, he doesn't live very far from where he's in this bar, but he's a law-abiding citizen, and everything about him says he is. He doesn't do things wrong. So even though he has a car there, he doesn't want to drive it. He doesn't have money for a cab, and he's trying to hustle somebody into giving him a ride. And we suspect that that's how he meets our movie star, that he offers to give him a ride or whatever. We don't know at that point. But Victor needs to get home, and he won't take his car, and he has no money left for a cab because he spent it all on booze. So he's kind of, in his mind, in a little bit of a jam. He needs to go home, and he doesn't know how to get there. We think our men took him home.
Without a license plate or an identifiable driver, the car is just a tease. Who was behind the wheel the night Victor was killed?
This maniac is on the loose. He's already killed once, and my gut is telling me he likes it, and he's going to kill again.
Several days after the murder of Victor Woods, the police have very few leads in their investigation.
It was a mystery. It was like, why would somebody do that to somebody and then set a fire? You're obviously putting a lot of other people in danger as well, people who lived in that apartment complex. So it kind of takes on a whole different meaning than just a basic fire.
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation examines the bloody socks found in the kitchen. As Kenda suspected, tests show that the blood was not the victim's, but instead probably belonged to the suspect. But the test results don't point to anyone specific.
Detectives have very little to go on. They have a vague description of a car, a vague description of a guy that matches half the men in the United States, 35 and under.
I got zipped. So we're going to try off-the-wall stuff, then maybe get lucky. We got one witness that says this is a jacked-up, customized car. Is she right? I don't know. In the absence of anything else, let's go with that. So I have my guys start contacting custom car clubs, auto body shops, muffler shops, places that commonly do work on cars like that and who commonly know gearheads who have cars like that.
You want to make sure everybody knows that this vehicle, this suspect, this description fits a possible crime scene. You want to get that information out to as many people as possible in hopes that we come up with a lead.
Investigators canvass car shops across Colorado Springs, but to no avail.
We get nowhere. Nobody can put that kind of a car with that kind of a guy. So that straw that we're trying to grab, we can't reach it. We are doing a lot of work with no result. So we need to expand our horizons. What if he belongs to a car club somewhere else? So we expand our search.
Working the theory that their suspect may have connections outside of Colorado Springs, investigators send what they know about the case to the FBI.
There's a system put in place by the FBI called the VICAP system. It stands for Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, a method by which every police department in the country can enter information about unsolved cases. So if you have a case that's unsolved, it may compare to one in some other state or some other city. We entered the Victor Woods case into that system, and we got nowhere with that either. At this point in this investigation, we've done everything we can humanly think of to do, and we have learned exactly nothing. We haven't found our guy. We don't have a clue on who he is or where he is. And we've got this mountain of paper that is absolutely, at this point, meaningless.
When you have nothing to go on, those to me are the saddest, number one, because you've got nothing that you can work on. And they're the most frustrating because you just absolutely have nowhere you can go. You have thought of just about everything you can think of. You've run it by each other. You've talked to other detectives. You've discussed where we need to go, and you just aren't going anywhere.
Victor's friends begin to wonder if he had simply bumped into the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong tavern.
I would think if Victor was drinking and if he was unable to make it home, maybe he wouldn't have used the caution that he should have.
The connection to the bar reminds Kenda of something one of the waitresses told him at the beginning of the investigation.
When we're in the bar and we're talking to all these bar folks, we're talking to the waitress. The waitress is cute, young, dressed appropriately for a waitress. She remembers approaching this guy, our Mr. X, our movie star, and he didn't react to her at all. Didn't even speak to her, just looked at her. Her feeling? Well, he has to be homosexual. Why? Because he didn't respond to you?
The suggestion, however, forces investigators down another blind alley.
We talked to everybody Victor's ever known in his life, his family, his coworkers. We find no evidence, none, of any kind, of Victor Woods being homosexual in any way.
Once again, a strong lead goes nowhere.
I had a sign in my office. It says, "Mysteries make my head hurt." And they do. In this particular case, now I have the ultimate challenge. There's no link. There is no link to this guy. Who the hell is he? And how did he come into Victor Woods' life? It's like you sit there and just stare at the wall, like, what did I forget? There's still no key here. Where is the key? And you look at your blank wall and you look at it and you say, who are you? Where are you? Where is your car that everybody says you have? What'd you do with the car? Who are you, man? Who are you?
The answer to these questions lies 40 miles south of Colorado Springs. On February 3rd, 1988, 8 days after the murder of Victor Woods, a souped-up Camaro pulls into the parking lot of a small hotel in Pueblo, Colorado. A man armed with a .38 caliber pistol gets out of the car and walks into the lobby.
He pointed a weapon at the clerk and he told the clerk that this is a robbery. About that time, a security guard who was making his rounds around the outside of the hotel entered the lobby, and then the man with the weapon pointed it at the security guard, and he said, "I know you are armed, don't go for your weapon." And then he approached the security guard, disarmed the security guard, and then shot the security guard right in the face. The security guard fell to the floor, but he did survive, and he was able to hear what happened next. He told us that he heard the suspect go back toward the lobby. He heard a second gunshot, which would have been the shot that killed the clerk laying on the floor. And then he heard the suspect leave the hotel, and he heard a loud vehicle, like a loud muscle car, pull out of the parking lot of the hotel.
The cold-blooded killing shocks the small community.
It was the kind of thing where, wow, this poor person was just at work doing his job, and somebody comes in for really no reason other than, maybe a small robbery that's not going to net a lot of money, and shoots this young man just in cold blood.
Lieutenant Kenda doesn't know it yet, but Victor Woods was just the beginning. Kenda is now hunting a serial killer, and the clock is ticking. When Victor Woods is found murdered, the only clues to the killer's identity are that he's a white male in his early 30s and that he drives a loud muscle car. So when investigators fail to turn up any new leads, the trail goes cold. But a week later, a second man turns up dead. This time, however, police have a solid lead. According to the hotel workers, this same suspect robbed the same hotel several weeks earlier.
There was a robbery in January of 1988 in which a female clerk was held up. She had a pretty good description of the person who robbed her.
The clerk provides a description eerily similar to the bartenders at the Yukon Tavern. A good-looking white male in his early 30s. This time, news reports of the shooting result in a tip to the police hotline.
The caller who called in the tip to Crime Stoppers stated that they had overheard Ronald Lee White making comments about having hit the hotel the first time and was going to do it again. The caller then assumed that the second robbery that resulted in the murder was the work of Ronald White.
A background check reveals that Ronald Lee White has a long and extensive criminal record. It also shows that he's been living in an apartment in Colorado Springs. Pueblo investigators immediately contact the Colorado Springs PD SWAT team. However, notification of the impending arrest doesn't reach Lieutenant Kenda.
We pulled a photograph of Ronald Lee White and we used that in the photo arrays that we showed to the victims. Once we had him identified as the killer, we worked with the Colorado Springs Police Department. Their tactical enforcement unit set up on Ronald White's residence.
White has no idea the cops are outside. As he leaves his apartment, police make the arrest. White is brought to the station. He is one of the most chilling suspects local police officers have ever seen.
When you look at a picture of Ronald Lee White, you see a blank stare in his eyes. I've seen that stare before in people who have committed very vicious crimes. When you look in a face like that, you know that you're looking at a very dangerous, very heartless, uncaring individual.
He's the type of person that is really there's no more rehabilitation involved with Ronald White. There's only taking him off the streets and making sure he can't hurt other people.
On the day after White's arrest in Pueblo, a startling report arrives at the Colorado Springs Police Department.
I run across this Rimmon bulletin, Rocky Mountain Information Network, describing the arrest of one Ronald Lee White, described as a white male, brown hair, hazel eyes. He's born in 1955, makes him in his early 30s. He has a Chevy Camaro blue with light blue pinstripes. He's under arrest for 2 counts of murder. This absolutely piques my interest. Instantly, look what we have here. Maybe we have our guy. But I'm trying to hold back my excitement because I've been disappointed in this case 5,000 times. But this guy fits very nicely, and he is the right look, and he is the right car, and he's violent. So I like it, but I'm just a little bit afraid of liking it too much. But we gotta look into this.
While investigators believe White is the right suspect in the hotel shooting, can they connect him to Victor Woods?
We take his picture out to the waitress at the bar. We get a looks like ID, not a positive ID. That looks like the guy. Great. Bartender the same, looks like the guy. There's no positive ID. We can't put him anyplace. Do I have anything I can take to court? No, I don't. The car is the closest link we have, but we have a witness that thinks it's a Trans Am. His car is a Camaro. The only thing I have is reasonable suspicion. He might be our killer. That's not enough to make the charges stick, but it is enough to warrant a conversation. I need to talk to this guy. I need to get Ronald Lee White to tell me he killed Victor Woods. I need that confession.
White is the type of case that you want to do everything you can, from the district attorney's office to the police department, through the multiple jurisdictions, to make sure that we arrest as soon as possible so that he doesn't kill again and that we convict.
The evidence points towards Ronald Lee White as the primary suspect in the Victor Woods case. But is it enough? Without any guarantees, the veteran detective decides to face off with a possible serial killer in an effort to make him confess.
In many ways, it's a game of poker for all the money, except we're playing with his life.
On February 8th, 1988, 13 days after the murder of Victor Woods, a new suspect emerges, Ronald Lee White. He's already under arrest for murder in Pueblo, Colorado. But did he kill Victor as well?
I have reasonable suspicion. Do I have anything else? Nope. I don't even have enough to arrest him. But I might be able to play him. I might be able to get him to tell me. So our plan is formulated. We're going to request the Pueblo PD to bring him to the Springs. I want him a little off balance. I want him to wonder why he's being driven somewhere else. Make him think about it. The drive up from Pueblo takes 45 minutes to an hour. Ample time for Ronald Lee White to wonder what is happening. If he is who I think he is, his personality is such that if he thinks you already know, he will tell you what he's done. If he doesn't think you know, he won't tell you anything.
Kenda has his detectives talk to him first, but White just sits there, apparently unfazed by the situation.
He just finds this all to be annoying. You get anybody else in an interrogation room that's under arrest for murder already, and you're about to tag him for another one, he's shaking so bad he can't sit still. That's what makes him a scary dude. He is not the boy next door. He might look like the boy next door, but he isn't. When you're talking to somebody, interviewing them, interrogating them, you want to get them comfortable. You want to get them really comfortable. You want to make friends. Tell me about yourself. What do you do for a living? What do you like to do in your spare time? You got kids? It's just a conversation, and then you take that comfort away in an instant. You say something critical to him. You mention a name, a fact, and see what kind of reaction you get. Not what he says, what his face tells you. Then you know. You know if you're talking to the right guy. When I walk in, White is asleep. Even though he's in a major jam, he's bored. That's what kind of person White is. But I walk in, I'm a new face. There's a no smoking sign on the wall of the interrogation room, and I see his eyes go to it. Would you like a cigarette, Ron? Well, there's this sign. Yeah, I know, but I kind of run this place, so I can kind of do what I want to. So I gave him a cigarette. He's cuffed in front of him. I gave him a lighter because I wanted to get a better look at his hand without him thinking I'm looking at it. It's been treated now, but still it's going to be consistent with a hand slipping off a handle onto a blade. So he lights his cigarette. We talk for a minute. I said, you know why you're here, Ron? I don't know, is the response. Oh, let me explain. People see things, Ron. People see you. Sometimes you don't see them or you don't pay attention. Like the waitress in the bar who identifies you positively. that you're the guy that's in the bar. And of course, there's that bartender who positively identified you as talking to Victor. 2 other women at the apartment complex. They see your car. They see smoke. That's the night you killed Victor Woods. You see what I mean? People notice things.
Kenda now has Ronald Lee White's full attention.
He's just looking at me, not responding. Not saying anything, just looking at me. You killed him, didn't you? He came on to me, man. He came on to me. He said, Ronnie, try again. He looked at me and smiled and said, well, maybe he just pissed me off. I killed him, like you said. I cut my hand in that knife. That hurt too.
White confesses to killing Woods, but never explains what really happened that fateful night. Kenda believes that the evening started off as nothing more than 2 guys talking to each other in a bar.
The thing that's so spooky about that whole affair, it's a chance encounter. I don't think there was anything more to it than that. I think that the likelihood is that Victor is drunk. Victor wants a ride home because he's afraid to drive, and he asked the wrong guy for it. And the likelihood is because Vic is sociable and he's been drinking. Come on, let's have another drink. All right, he goes in for whatever reason.
And when he goes inside, something goes very wrong.
Now, did Victor go into his saying the wrong thing, which he did when he drinks? What if he said something to Ron and made him mad? And Ron went off and grabbed a knife and hacked Victor to pieces with it in a moment of rage, because that's what Ron White is. Ron's a sociopath. And I think that's all there was to it. It was a moment in time for Ron White, and it ended Victor Woods' life.
Kenda has his man, but just how many other victims are out there?
We're going to charge you with this murder, Ron, another one. You're making a list. Who else have you killed? He didn't answer me, but he looked at me, and he smirked at me.
Ronald Lee White soon admits to shooting the hotel clerk in Pueblo, as well as his old roommate 3 years before.
White tells the investigators that he is an avid Star Trek fan. He prefers the old programs. He has a roommate, and the roommate wants to watch something else, just as he's prepared to watch his Star Trek program. So Ronald White shoots his roommate in the face with his .44 Magnum revolver because he was going to change that channel, and that's just not going to work. Then Ronald White tells the investigators that he wraps his dead roommate in a blanket, and his roommate, White's roommate, had a pickup truck. And Ron White put him in the truck because he didn't want to f up his Camaro. His plan was to drive his roommate out into the boonies and cut him up in little pieces with a chainsaw and feed him to Mother Nature. He is out there in a state park. He has a gun with him, his usual weapon, .44 Magnum revolver. He has his dead roommate in the pickup truck, and Ronald White is getting ready to start his chainsaw. A car pulls up next to the truck. White looks at the driver, says, "What do you want?" The driver is a guy in his 30s with his wife, same age, 2 little kids. They're tourists from somewhere. They tell him that. Well, we're tourists and we're lost. We don't know how to get out of this park. White is thinking he should just kill all these people, but he decides he's busy. So he tells the guy how to get out of the park, because he knows the park very well. So the family thanks him and drives off. We never found that family. The investigators that worked the White case never found the family. I wonder what they'd think if they heard that story, how close they came to meeting Mr. White in a much more personal way. White then proceeds to cut up his roommate and scatter the pieces around the park.
They were going to be able to obtain the death penalty in Pueblo, and they wondered if we would incorporate our case with theirs in order to better ascertain that result. And so that's what we did on that case.
White eventually pleads guilty to the murders of Victor Woods, the hotel clerk, and White's roommate. He receives a life sentence without the possibility of parole. During his sentencing, White tells the judge that he had a hand in as many as 15 other murders.
We have the general idea of what a serial murderer might look like or whatever, and you look at Ronald Lee White and you think, here's somebody who I would walk past in the mall and never even think that he's somebody who could be so cold-blooded, who could have, maybe a half an hour before killed somebody and then be just walking down the street the next minute.
I thought that this guy was sick and that he should be put away forever. He took something that couldn't be given back. He had no regard for human life, and he would obviously do it again if need be.
Vic was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This guy was going to probably kill somebody that night anyway, and it just so happened that they crossed paths.
Closure never happens for a victim's family. It just doesn't. I think many people can quietly take the pain. Some people cannot. I think the grief reaction varies widely. Some people can deal with it, and some never do. I don't think anybody ever really does. There's something profoundly wrong about your child dying before you do. That's not the way of things. It's not supposed to be that way. And I don't think you recover from that. I don't.
When Vic was killed, it confused me and enraged me, and it was just one of those lessons in life that life just isn't fair. It isn't right. And things can happen at a moment's notice.
What could Victor Woods have done any differently? Nothing. He's just looking for a ride home. He just finds exactly the wrong guy on planet Earth to provide that ride. Things happen. People die sometimes as a result.